Thank you all for being here today. It means very much to me to see among you all the people that I love and care about here with me on a very special day. I'm honored to receive the 2023 Proverse Prize and privileged to be chosen as one of the two best Hong Kong entries. I want to take this moment to thank Professors Gillian and Verna Bickley for not just awarding me this prize, but for making Proverse Hong Kong a dedicated, supportive, and safe space for aspiring writers like myself to bare our hearts and validate our souls. Thank you for everything you have done and continue to do. Growing up, I never valued poetry or literature. I spent the first 21 years of my life here in this city, and like many others, I was always taught to focus on getting good grades, a good career, a good spouse, to follow the rules and steer clear of excitement, of adventure, of risk. I liked reading books and making up stories in my head, but literature was a meaningless endeavor. It existed and should only exist inside the confines of a classroom, safe, contained, controlled. And in some ways, this is true. Poems, after all, can't pay bills or buy a flat. You don't get dividends from words on a page. I took this belief with me for a while, even after I left Hong Kong. Even though I studied history and philosophy, subjects I later discovered were equally worthless, it took many years before I managed to pull the lid off that was bottling up my true nature. And to this day, I still remember that day, that precise moment when I was overpowered by the desire to write. It was just before Christmas in 2020, and Illinois had just come out of a stay at home order which had cancelled Thanksgiving. Worried that another order was on the horizon, I spent several days just wandering the streets of downtown Chicago, catching glimpses of desperate shops trying to make the most of the brief window that got people out and about. I myself was deeply depressed. I spent most of the year isolated, unable to go home. My research for my PhD program had stalled, and I was constantly worrying that my funding would be run out before I finished my degree. I walked down Michigan Avenue aimlessly. It was already dark at 5 and I was freezing. Tired and bored, I turned into an alley and dipped into the closest entryway to escape the December snow and figure out where I was. As I struggled to navigate Google Maps with my frigid hands, I heard a rustle behind me, and I turned to see four bodies huddled together in the corner of the tiny entryway, under a mound of blankets, open suitcases, and other luggage, trash bag, and boxes. Four girls of various sizes. The biggest couldn't be older than 16 or 17. Shocked, I jumped back out into the alley, following my instant impulse to run, to get away from the uncomfortable mixture of guilt and pity that so often comes when face to face with poverty, real poverty. I was then suddenly overwhelmed with emotion, and in a blur, I took out my wallet and gave them everything I had, apologizing over and over as I handed them crumpled notes and rusty coins. The girls took the monies in silence, but one of them reached for a box and took out several large plastic folders, those A4 ones, all stuffed to the brim with random scraps of paper. Without saying anything, she handed me the first piece of paper she pulled out, a little cue card slightly torn and stained, and on it, scribbled in blue ballpoint pen, was a few sentences. It read, I knew I was dying. Something in me said, go ahead, die, sleep, become as them, accept. Then something else in me said, no, save the tiniest bit. It needn't be much, just a spark. A spark can set a whole forest on fire. Just a spark. Save it. In that moment, and in the ensuing days following that moment, I knew what believed all my life was wrong. Poetry matters, even to those who have nothing, because words cost nothing. But for those who choose to use words to express themselves, even in the face of futility, it can mean everything. Thank you all again for being here with me today. It means everything.